So let's now export this. I was just going to put it straight into Painter, but I think I better explain the export process really. So File, Export. I've got my low poly selected. Let's just confirm I have. Yes, I do. No, I don't. The other one. There we are. That one there. Yep, that's the correct one. So File, Export Selection. We need to be an FBX export. I'm just going to overwrite what I had, so my low poly FBX. I'm going to make sure my smoothing groups are on and my triangulate is on too. So for the low poly, smoothing groups and triangulate. Just export selection, hit yes. So that's exported. I'm just going to temporarily hide that. We've got our high poly selected. Obviously when we press 3 we've got a visual indication of the subdivision, but we need to subdivide that via the polygon method. So right click, shift right click and smooth. Put the divisions up to something feasible such as 2, you could try 3. Don't go any wilder than that because you'll only slow everything down. So select this, File, Export Selection, overwrite my high poly FBX, and in this instance you want smoothing groups and you want to turn off triangulate when it comes to the high poly. So essentially just smoothing groups. Export Selection, overwrite that, hit OK. So I've already got something in Painter, but I'll just start again. So I'm just going to go File, New, discard all that. So Document Resolution 2048. I'm going to select my low poly mesh, which is yonder. Click OK. So there's my low poly mesh. It's going to confirm that those hard edges are in place. So that one there, yep, that seems to be fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to bake this out and check to see what the normals are doing and make fixes accordingly. So bake textures. I'm going to select my high poly variant, high poly FBX. I'm going to make sure that match is set to by mesh name, anti-aliasing 4x4. We'll look at it at reasonable quality, and our suffix needs to be underscore HP and underscore LP. You can always call yours underscore high, underscore low, so you don't necessarily have to do this section. Choice is entirely yours. Output size, to Daisy, at 2048. I'm going to click on my ID map over here, and I'm going to make sure this is set to material color, and then literally bake texture. I'll pause it now because it can take a while to do this. So that's now baked, and if we just have a quick look at that, let's just quickly drop a texture on there. I suppose I've got a pre-existing one I made earlier on, so I'll just drop that on there. Give it a few moments to do its thing. You can see on the top edges over here it appears to be correct, so there's no problems there. So we'll have a look at any other areas where it could be problematic. So that looks okay, no problems there, no concerns. Okay, so these edges again, fine, you can live with that. Slight issue when it comes to this section over here. We can see we seem to have a bit of weirdness going on, and that's all. It's down to a few reasons actually. Firstly, the underlying geometry, our low poly, isn't sufficiently detailed enough to capture the curvature of our high poly. So as a result, you can see these little triangular sections over here. And in some ways, these are truly unavoidable when you're trying to recreate a smooth shape at a low poly variant. There is some ways of getting around it, but that means hand editing the file or the normal map section. So what we can do is we can have a look at these bits over here, these little segmented bit, all these strange umbrella artifacts, and then maybe if we put a hard edge in there and break off the actual UV as well, that could alleviate some of the issues there. So we'll try that next. So back into Maya. I'm going to hide that. In fact, we better bring our outliner back up. And in our low poly, it should be that one there. Just Shift H that, and then isolate everything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the entire ring, polys, Control right click, two edges, edge perimeter, and then Shift right click, hard edge. And then what we need to do now is just go into our UV editor, and I believe this should be the correct row of polys. Again, control right click to edges, edge perimeter, press shift and X to cut that, and just select the UV, so just double click and just move one out of the way to try and find out what's going on. Double click on that one and just move that out of the way. So essentially that there now has a hard edge. I'll just put this back into place like so. This will fit with inside that. Zoom in a touch. Yep, that's fine. And we can just pop this one to the side for the time being, just over here. So that's now been fixed. Let's now export that back out. What I did notice was, remember we had that funny edge on here, so I think we should try softening this and see what happens. I'm just going to basically whiz round and select those edges. So press 4 to make sure that all that is selected. Yes, that's selected. I'm going to soften those. So with that, those two changes in place, file export selection again. Overwrite our low poly. That should be fine. It will retain the settings from previously. But the thing to note is our low poly needs to be triangulated, so we've done that incorrectly. So we just need to go export selection again, and we need to triangulate our low poly. It's the high poly where we switch off triangulate. Export the selection, overwrite the low poly, back into Substance, edit project configuration, just modify or reselect the low poly. Click OK, give it a few moments to do its thing, and then we'll have to rebake it as well. So what I'll do now is I'm just going to click on the bake once this section is done. Just going to recompute the texture. Naturally I'd expect errors given that we've made a modification. So click on bake and agree with the default settings again. Everything seems fine. Click on bake and then I'll pause it and unpause it when it's done. So now that that's baked, let's again just check top section to make sure things are good. Yep, things are okay there. So the two changes we made were we added a soft edge on this particular section over here. So I incorrectly added a hard edge on there, and now you can see that's nice and smooth. That's good. And now that we've added a hard edge on there, we've eliminated some of the issues associated with that funkiness. But you can still make out the fact that, you know, it's probably a bit too low poly. So long term wise, I would go back in there and modify this to try and accommodate the curvature of the high poly a bit further. Regardless, I think that's good enough. I think we can work with that. Yep, that's absolutely fine. So now that that's done, I'm probably going to save this at some point. But I suppose we can just go back and rather than, you know, we are going to rebake everything out again anyway, so I suppose we might as well just finish the unwrapping process and load everything back up. So let's just get everything back up on screen again. Select my low poly and hide everything else. I'm going to go back into my editor. Let's have a look. So we know that one's unwrapped, just turn it onto wireframe. So this section over here, we'll have a look at that next. But let's just double click this, drag it over here somewhere, and just put a split in there. So my feeling is if we put a split, well, we've got some hard edges over here anyway, so we definitely need to put a split there. So those two sections can be split off. So Shift X will cut that. That's going to leave us with 3 UV shells, 1, 2 and 3. So we simply need to select that edge there, double click that edge there, and double click that edge there. Shift X again, I should break that apart, and then simply just hit unfold on here. So if you press it again, sometimes it can straighten it out again, but you know, it seems fine at the moment. So that's good to go. I probably should just straighten some of these edges off, so I'm just going to select that one over here and just click on the straighten button. Oops a daisy. I need to do it from a UV level, I think, or do I? I should be just allowed to select that one And straighten, there we are, that's better. I just clicked on the wrong thing. So straighten that one. I always get confused between that one there that looks like straighten, but it's not. So, and that is there maybe. There we are, that will do. I'm not going to be overly concerned about the textile rate at the moment because we'll fix all of that in a bit. So for the time being, that's fine for that one. Let's just go back into our editor. So we've got these two done. So let's just shove that over there. We've got obviously the bolts, so the bolts should be relatively straightforward. We've got a 90-degree edge over here, so I'm just going to select all 4 of these. Just going to break those, Shift X, and then these should be done, so quick unfold on those. You can just pack this as well now, so all I've done is I've just literally just hit scale, automatically rotate scale shells, and that will just put them all together. So we know that one's done, pop that over there, and then we've not got long to go now. So the main shaft of the actual handle, so let's have a look at the 90 degrees. Yes there is, so we'll select that one, certainly break that one off, we'll break that one off, and these two as well. So daisy, Shift X. So those look good to go as well. Let's try and separate some of these. So we know we need a big vertical split in the middle. So we'll select that one, Shift X to put that cut in place. Here we just need to double click on one of these edge loops, Shift X, whiz down, and we do need to put in fact we've got 2 loops here, so sorry, 2 shells. So select one of them, and also Shift X on that, and then just whiz up to the top. I just realised that we have this shell as well, and then just put a split in one of these edges over here. So like that one there, and again Shift X. So that should be all the splits for that particular one as well. Don't worry about too much about why these splits are going where they are. That will make a lot more sense when we do the unwrapping or the UV unwrap lecture. So I'm just going to unfold that a few times, and then we obviously need to straighten this out as well. So I'm select one of those edges, straighten, select that edge and straighten, and do the others as the case may be. Let's have a look at the bottom. There we are. Select one of them. Straighten that one. Oopsie daisy. I've welded it to the other one. Oh, it's doing something really strange. Let's have a look. Oopsie daisy. Did by UVs. And straighten that one. So that bit's done as well. Just push that over to the side, and that should just leave us with the bottom section. Try and find where we've got any 90 degrees. It should be that one there. And that's the only one really. But we need to put a split at the base anyway. So let's just expand that out. Shift X. Move that across, and then we can just put a split, or we need to split all the way along the edge, or the bottom should I say. So we need that one, double click on these, and then finally all the way back round. Looks like we've got everything now, that's good. So Shift X with that, and let's have a look, see what we've got. So we should have 1, 2 and 3 shells for that, and obviously we need to put a break down the middle there. And press unfold a few times. And then we can always straighten these off now as well, so daisy, not one. So that's fine now. So it looks like we've got all of them done, and all appear to be fine, so we just need to pack all this in 0 to 1 and make sure that the textile rate is correct as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to double click on one of these, such as that. I'm just going to go into my UV toolkit. I'm going to get the textile rate from that and then apply that to everything and then set. And then we just need to put this in 0 to 1 UV space. I'll temporarily just hit the I can't remember the name of that, it's in here somewhere. It's called pack basically, I'll just refer to it as pack, yeah. Pack UVs. And that's done quite a good job of optimizing it, putting things within 0 to 1. There is additional room for optimization. We could scale this up ever so slightly to fill the gaps up over here. And we could, for example, and I probably would advise you to do this, so that there can fit in there, no problem whatsoever. This one here can fit in there. And then we might be able to, this one over here, let's have a look. In fact, we might be better off, let's have a look, see who this one is. This one goes there. I think we might be able to put this one in here. It's a bit tight, I'd probably have to scale it ever so slightly, but given the fact that we do have a spare bit of UV space, I'll just put this other one back in. So that one will go there, and this one, I'll just pop that there for the time being. If I just click on the UV shell option over here, it'll just allow me to drag entire shells. And grab this one, move this one over here. Let's have a look, see what we've got. Let's just move some of these bolts and whatnot. I'll just pop them inside of this. So we don't want any overlapping obviously, so I'll move that one down a touch. I'm just going to move this slightly in the centre and just expand that out with R. I'll press R. Going to give us a few extra pixels to play with. Let's just confirm nothing is falling outside of UV space, 0 to 1. It's not, that's fine. We're slightly out in that corner there. All I'm going to do here is just, we could just rotate that round I suppose. There we go. So that's now correct. So we should just confirm. If we click on this option over here in shaded, it's going to tell us that hopefully the textile rate and nothing is mirrored inside out. And also click on this one to make sure our textile rate is correct. That appears to be absolutely fine, so that's a good sign. So I think we can export this out now, and then essentially re-export the entire high poly as well. So with those objects selected, File, Export Selection. So remember how our low poly one needs to have triangulate on. So export that out, overwrite that. Let's just unhide everything else. It's a daisy. I'm going to go to my outliner to get all this. Outliner. So that there's hidden at the moment. So there's our high poly. Let's just hide our low poly now. We've got our high poly there. We need to obviously subdivide this now. So I probably should save this out. So I'm going to hit save. And then it's probably wise at this point to, prior to collapsing it or subdividing the actual high poly, it's probably worthwhile at this point to keep a backup copy, so that if we ever need to undo the number of subdivisions on there, we've got an original one to work from. So that looks absolutely fine there. I'm probably going to add another couple of swift loops or edge loops in here, just to reduce any potential smoothing bleeds. They're fine, great stuff. So let's just now subdivide all of this. So I'm just going to select all of it. shift right click smooth. I think we did 3 last time, so let's be consistent, and I'll do 3 there here, 3 here as well. So now we've got a very high resolution mesh to work from. So select the entire mesh, file export selection, high poly, up to daisy. We need to make sure triangulate's off, high poly FBX, yes, so that should be fine, and hit Control S as well. Save that, go back into Painter. This time round we'll need to overwrite the low poly, so our low poly FBX, click OK. Remember that if anything goes untoward and incorrect, we will just apply whatever principle we applied here and manually go back in and fix. So we'll see what it looks like first, and then we may need to go back in there and fix. Clearly it's going to screw up because we still haven't assigned our new bake via the new high poly. So let's just select our high poly. Mesh name subsampling 4x4x4 underscore HP underscore LP, all LP to be correct. So I'm just going to hit bake and then I'll pause it. So now that bake has indeed finished, so let's have a quick whiz round, make sure everything is plain ball. So we might as well at this point just expand this. So yes, top's absolutely fine. So obviously we tested this process out on this anyway, so we know we've made some fixes there, so those are good. Yep, that's fine, there's nothing untoward going on there, that's cool. The bolts look okay as well. This particular section seems okay as well. Yeah, smoothing on that is fine. And then just whiz round down to the bottom. Just confirm things are good with regards to these 90-degree sections. Yep, those are good. There's lots of nice curvature on there. So I think all in all that has actually worked quite well. So the only real issue we had was just triple checking to make sure whether we'd made some of the correct fixes over here. With regards to these hard edges over here. And obviously we had a hard edge there which should have been a soft, which we now fixed as well. So now it's simply a matter of creating the materials and applying them on the actual asset itself. So for the time being, just do some drag and drop functionality on here, and I'll create a video that explains how to go about texturing things in a more sort of customized fashion later on. So that should be the end of the second tutorial. So essentially you've figured out how to make another slightly more complex asset. You've had to handcraft some areas, for example, show you some individual poly modeling or editing options, and just create some additional complexity to try and get your skills up on numerous assets rather than just the two, which was the the barrel with the spout really. So the process that we've just achieved here, you need to apply that to literally everything you do from now onwards. So high poly, low poly, named correctly, unwrapped correctly, fixes accordingly depending on what you've done for the hard and soft edges and the UV window, UV shells, and then ultimately into Painter for a quick bake. The next tutorial will probably come out in a few weeks' time. I'll have to decide on what particular asset that's going to be. Probably something slightly more complex with some additional changes, maybe a different approach to modelling some more complex areas. Okay.